Hello, welcome to the Ghosts of Harrenhal. My name's Simon.
And I'm Mackelly.
Thank you for joining us for episode 181 of our chapter-by-chapter book review of A Song of Ice and Fire by George Martin. I used to catch the 181 bus to school.
Okay.
Number of the bus. Today we're discussing chapter 37 of A Storm of Swords. That's Jaime 5.
And I have embraced the Ned Flanders. I'm Mackelly. I thought about adjusting it, but no, I'm just going to go with it. And as always, we're going to chat about the chapter and try not to spoil any future plot points for you. Hopefully, we're going to provide you some entertainment along our way.
We'll summarise what happened, discuss our thoughts on it, provide some useful background, compare it to the television show, indulge in a little pedantry, and cover some relevant news and listener correspondence. Be sure to check out the show notes. They'll provide some additional information, which will be particularly handy if you're not reading along with us. How are you, sir?
I am doing all right. I slept in today. As you know, you texted me an hour and a half before I got up and told me you were ready to record. Clearly, I was not. It has been a week. Wow, has it been a week? Mostly good things, but I mean, pretty much all good things. It's just been crazy week. I think we had our sustainer call, right? Is that the same week?
We
this
did,
been
yes.
all part of this
Yes.
week?
Yes.
And that was awesome. And that was the last I'd talked to you, I believe. So
I think so.
in the intervening time, I met Ethan in Greensboro, North Carolina, to watch Pitt play Georgia Tech in the NCAA men's basketball tournament.
I know that Pitt won that game.
They did win that game. Yes,
check me out.
Very fun, very enjoyable time. And the plan was, I live about an hour away. He lives about an hour and a half away. We were going to meet there, watch the game, and then go our separate ways. But I found the day before, someone was selling a vehicle on the bulletin board at, the virtual bulletin board at work. Huh? And I sent it to Ethan, and he was interested. And so he set up a time to test drive it Wednesday night, basically, after the game. So he then followed me back home. And he test drove it. He liked it. 10:30 that night, the two of them agreed on a price. They were going to meet 11 a.m. the next morning to go to the DMV and transfer over the title and pay him and all that stuff. So that left us just a few hours to figure out how he was going to finance this vehicle. And he had enough for a hefty down payment, but we did want him to, finance a portion of it through a loan since, he's an adult now. But it was very challenging to try and procure that in the very small amount of time that we had. So standing at the DMV, I wrote this guy a check for thousands of dollars. Mm-hmm. Have my checkbook, and here I am writing it. And I'm like, how do I even write this out?
You get one of those giant checks for that.
Yeah, I know, right? So yeah, I am thousands poorer than I was when I was watching said basketball game. But, then I sucked various amounts of money out of Ethan's accounts, and now he and I will figure out the rest. But that was quite the chaos. It was a very fun time watching the basketball game, and then all chaos broke out for the next day and a half. But here we are. And not only that, but my little girl, is all the way in New York City.
Oh, wow. Exciting.
Yeah. She's with the theater group. They're going to go see 2 Broadway shows and 1 off-Broadway show.
Oh, excellent.
So
excellent.
She just got there in the middle of the night this morning. So, yeah, a lot going on. And that's why this episode is it's not maybe our most finely crafted episode. a lot of things done on the fly this week when I had a moment.
I've not been picking up the slack because I've had a busy week too. I've had... It's not going to sound as important because it was mostly going for drinks with work people, but it was kind of like an obligation that I couldn't get out of, So
hey, it takes up time.
Exactly.
That isn't GOH time.
Exactly. That's actually how I knew about the Pitt basketball game, because I was watching it. It was on another television while I was watching a soccer match with work people.
Did you see Ethan and me?
I did not. I don't think they were cutting to the bar in. Oh no, you were actually at the game.
We were at the game. Yes,
Oh,
we
I
went.
misunderstood. Yes, I see. The game is held in Greensboro. That's right. Oh,
Right.
how
Yes, it was held.
exciting!
Yes, it was a lot of fun. It was a lot of fun.
Has the tournament progressed? I assume it has. They're already knocked out, presumably.
They are. Yes, they got
Oh, okay.
knocked out the next day in
Okay.
embarrassing fashion. Lost by 30 to Duke.
Oh, okay.
That's pit
Well,
basketball for you.
Well, you went to the right one then.
Yes, thankfully we picked the good one.
Or in Pitt's case, potentially the only one.
The only one. Yes. Now you alluded to a story during our sustainer call.
Let me get to that because
Okay.
the thing is, I'm almost certain that this story is going to end up on the cutting room floor. I have told
Okay.
almost nobody this story because it is too much. It is too much. It's going to make you laugh, and maybe one day we'll share it with the sustainers as a Easter egg. But it's
Okay.
the story comes from, and I'll tell the benign part of the story for everybody. I have taken to growing vegetables, and I'm very excited about this. Well, I'm very excited is a bit of a stretch. I'm enjoying the challenge of growing vegetables. To my right, I'm not going to bother showing you, but I have trays of seeds that are growing, and I've got cucumber plants and artichoke plants growing in my room, ready to plant outside when the frost ends.
Okay. Is there a chia pet?
No, not chia pet.
Okay.
And I've already planted outside. I've already planted carrots and beets, and the planting outside is what led to the problem because what happened was I have some patches of poison ivy in my yard,
You
and
sure do. Your arch
uh,
nemesis, really. Your
right,
yard nemesis.
and poison ivy, for those who don't know it, is astonishingly allergic reacting plant. Which secretes an oil onto your skin, and then that oil sort of seeps around your skin a little bit. It's very hard to dislodge it, and it causes a horrendous rash. I mean, genuinely horrendous looking rash. I've compared it to cordyceps. I mean, it looks like I am
Oh
from
yeah.
uh, and what happened was I know what that plant looks like, so I avoid it like the plague. But it's early spring, and the plant had not budded, so it didn't look like what I was expecting. So I was grabbing handfuls of it and tearing it out of the ground. It wearing shorts, so it's all over my legs too. Wearing short sleeves, so it's all the way up to my shoulders. It's it's an I'm an absolute mess.
It's not even funny, and I'm laughing
Oh.
because it's not the first time this has happened to you.
No, and the previous times I genuinely didn't know what the thing looked like. It would just get me because I was just pulling weeds up, and one of them was poison ivy. Now I've learned to identify it, but
Uh-huh.
apparently you just pulling the vines up without any leaf on them is enough to get you this and get you bad.
Oh wow.
So yes, be careful out there, kids. Um,
And
uh,
now we'll have a break for a
yeah.
for
But
an
I
off
think
the air story.
I can share on the Discord server the picture of the blisters on my hands, which is, I mean,
Yes.
I'll give you the visual now, but this is
Oh my
it's
gosh.
so much better. I mean, you
It
would not.
looks like a burn. It looks like you burned your hand.
Yeah, I mean that part of me there had a horrendous blister on it. Which that's the picture I'll share with the Discord server. Well, anyway, let's get down to business. How did we leave Jaime Lannister? Last we saw of Jaime, he and Brienne and their 15 fingers. Well, actually, I thought about that after I wrote that, and I was like, all 20 of their fingers made the journey. It's just 5 of them were detached. Uh,
Right. Yes, that is
yeah.
accurate. Yes.
They'd been taken to Harrenhal by the brave companions. Roose Bolton was not pleased with the maiming and had his maester Qyburn tend to Jaime's wounds and tried to guts it out, but it hurt a lot. Kind of like poison ivy.
And you have Maester in quotation marks because he's not actually a Maester.
Fallen maester.
Yes.
Mackelly, why don't we give the summary of this one?
I think we could do that. Well, Jaime joins Brienne in the Harrenhal bathhouse. As if that wasn't a surprise enough for her, he gingerly plops himself down in the same tub that she's in. The pair quickly begin to squabble, ending in Jaime putting the stump of his arm in her face and suggesting there's no wonder Renly died with her guarding him.
Brienne has had enough. She climbs out and prepares to leave. Jaime is surprised by his body's rather positive reaction to seeing her naked. Putting that sensation aside, he quickly apologizes for the unworthy outburst. He offers a truce, but she has no interest in such an agreement with a known trust breaker like him.
Jaime begins to tell her the details of how he became the Kingslayer, how Prince Rhaegar persuaded King Aerys to summon Tywin Lannister, but Tywin wasn't ready to commit yet. He was waiting to join the winning side. That Aerys had a select few pyromancers secretly place wildfire all around King's Landing. That Aerys' hand to the king tried to talk the king out of his plan and was burned alive for it. After Rhaegar fell to Robert on the Trident, the queen and Prince Viserys were sent to Dragonstone for safekeeping. However, Princess Elia and her children were kept in the Red Keep, so that the king would have leverage over Dorne, specifically Lewin Martell.
Grand Maester Pycelle talked Aerys into opening the gates for Tywin, and thus began the sack of King's Landing. Aerys decided it was time to leave Robert nothing but charred bones and cooked meat, sending the pyromancer Rossart to put the plan in motion. It's then that Jaime killed Rossart to stop him from destroying the city and those within, followed by killing the king. Later, he tracked down the other pyromancers who knew about the plan and killed them too.
Brienne is in disbelief. How could these details be true, yet nobody knows them? Jaime says it was part of the Kingsguard vow to keep the king's secrets. Besides, Ned Stark judged Jaime the moment he saw him in the throne room of the Red Keep. In his excitement, Jaime tried to exit his tub, but hit his stump and passed out from the pain. When he awoke, Brienne helped him get dressed, and accompanied him to the Great Hall and dinner with Lord Roose Bolton.
Awkward small talk of prunes and wines, Jaime asks what Roose plans to do with them. Roose says he has options. Edmure Tully offered 1,000 gold dragons for Jaime, to which Jaime suggests Cersei would pay 10 times that price. There's also the offer from Rickard Karstark of his daughter's hand in marriage. However, as Roose is recently married, that option isn't very appealing.
Roose admits he's leaving Harrenhal soon. Edmure Tully is marrying at the Twins, and King Robb has commanded Roose's attendance. Brienne asks if there's been any news of Arya Stark. Roose confirms she was lost but has been found, and Roose plans to ensure she makes it back to the north safely.
Back and forth between Jaime and Roose occurs regarding how helpful or not a Lannister-Bolton friendship might be. Jaime thinks that it's possibly a negotiation and is hoping that Brienne isn't really picking up on it. She interrupts and insists Roose free them so that they can continue to King's Landing and finish the prisoner transfer as Lady Catelyn Stark commanded.
Roose says he's heard it's an escape from River Run, and if Brienne aided in it, she's a traitor. Brienne is outraged, but Roose calms her by saying he's planning on sending Jaime to King's Landing just as she wants. There's just one small 5-fingered issue. Roose explains that Vargo Hoat cut off Jaime's hand to dissuade Roose from doing this exact thing.
You mean sending him back to King's Landing? Okay.
Yes. Not cutting off
yes.
his other hand.
Seems Hoat's options are running low. Only a Stark victory saves him from Tywin's retaliation because the brave companions switch sides. And that's getting less and less likely. So much so that Roose thinks King Robb should bend the knee. Even if that happens, it won't spare Hoat, so he's cut off Jaime's hand so that Roose won't turn Jaime over to Tywin, as Hoat is Roose's man, so Roose bears responsibility for the action.
Jaime swears he'll vouch for Roose, having no part in the action. Hoat acted alone. With that, Roose says Jaime will go to King's Landing when he's strong enough to make the trip. He'll be accompanied by an escort of Roose's men. Brienne says that's fine and all, but the Stark girls are her charge. Roose breaks it to Brienne that Sansa isn't going anywhere. She's married to Tyrion Lannister. No, Brienne won't be going on the trip to King's Landing in general. She'll be staying here. Roose can't take both of Hoat's prizes. He suggests that Brienne worry less about Starks and more about sapphires.
We'll be right back.
Hello, friends. Are you ready to make some unforgettable memories? Well, if so, consider the Marriott Bonvoy program. Discover the perfect destination for your summer getaway and unlock exclusive deals on luxurious accommodations. With our affiliate partnership, you'll enjoy unbeatable savings and a seamless booking experience. Don't let summer slip away. Visit Marriott Bonvoy today and make this vacation season one for the books. Use our Ghosts of Harrenhal affiliate page to check it all out and buy Bonvoy points or give some as a gift. The link to our page is in the show notes.
It's certainly not Jaime's worst crime, but jumping in the tub with Brienne uninvited is rather a Me Too crime, I feel. I mean, he could have got in another tub.
Yes, you could certainly understand how Brienne was embarrassed about the whole situation and uncomfortable, clearly quite uncomfortable. And I will say that not that this changes anything, but I'll just point out that the two already share an unusual level of intimacy, as she was charged with cleaning him up after he soiled himself on the ride to Harrenhal.
That's true. So, sharing a bath with him is sort of like pale in comparison, really.
Right. So maybe he just feels, you've already seen all this, but still, he certainly should have run that by her before he just jumped into the tub naked.
Presumably, while she was cleaning him up when he soiled himself, she herself was not naked. This is
a huge distinction right there.
I gotta say, as I read this chapter, I was struck by how much of this we'd spoiled. Honestly, I was like, he said all this, and then I realized it was just you and me that had said all this, really.
Right, yes. So we spoiled things like him killing Rosart, which he did tell us. He did tell us he killed Rosart, and he killed King Aerys. Or his moniker would be very oddly placed.
Maybe the Pyromancer Slayer.
We certainly hinted a lot toward Aerys' warm welcome. I did try my best not to specifically say what it was, but I think it was becoming pretty clear. We also talked about Lord Chelstead being burned alive for going against Aerys and trying to talk him out of the plan. But in our defense, Martin left us a lot of clues along the way that we had to mention. I mean, they were there, so we just kind of expounded on them and pulled them out. Now we certainly get the full picture, and there were things that we learn in this chapter that we didn't know about, like Jaime hunting down the other pyromancers that were involved. That shows he was really trying to protect the city and all of its people. He was ending that plot.
Yeah, my only question about that was, would they have triggered the plot without the command from Aerys? It feels like they were told to put me around there. Were they told, in the event of my death, trigger all this? I suppose that's the danger, that was a standing command. When I die, everybody dies,
Right, yeah, very well could have been, yeah.
But then what I would say is, how does a pyromancer light the wildfire safely?
I don't think they do. I think they were going up with the substance, as they call it.
I think as the pyromancer who's part of this plot, I would ignore the standing order to trigger the pyre when Aerys dies, because who's around to stop?
Right. Who's gonna tell him whether I did or didn't?
When Jaime came for me, I'd be like, dude, I'm not doing that anyway. Don't you worry.
I have no interest. Yeah. I'll tell you where each cache is. We could go safely defuse it. But the biggest bit of news that came out of this bath time story here was that he never told anybody about this, which we knew because we talked often about the fact that why has he never told anybody these things? He's never pleaded his case or even presented his reasoning for it.
Yeah. And he gives the reason for that, which is that it's because of Ned Stark, basically, that Ned Stark judged him from the get-go. And anything he said from that point forward would have just seemed like, making excuses for himself. He was already condemned in the eyes of the right hand of the new king.
Right. And, it made me think of last week was Davos, right? I believe so. When Davos told Stannis that Ned Stark wanted Robert to send Jaime to the wall.
Right.
And, if you know the full story, you're like, well, he kind of did some pretty good things. Ned would have probably been blown to bits along with everyone else in the city had Jaime not done what Jaime did. So, sending him to the wall might be a bit much. But it turns out, according to Jaime, he was upholding his vow of secrecy this whole time. Do we buy that necessarily? I don't know.
Yeah, it's so difficult because it feels like you've broken a much bigger aspect of your vow by killing the king.
Right.
Providing an explanation for why you did it, even though it reveals some of those now dead king's secrets, hardly seems like the thing that people are going to hang you for.
Right. And this is the same guy who pushed Bran out a window.
Yeah.
Do we believe he has that much honor to uphold this vow for this long? I mean, especially when the details could very possibly clear his name or at least give explanation to why he did what he did.
If the reason he isn't doing it is because he doesn't want to share Aerys' secrets, then what he's doing is he's confirming his nickname as the Kingslayer, which he could clear by telling the story. So if he were to tell the story and have his name cleared, people would say, you know, we're not going to call you the Kingslayer anymore because you did the right thing. But we're never going to forgive you for spilling those secrets. Jaime, secret spiller, you know.
Jaime secret spiller doesn't have nearly the same ring to it as Kingslayer. He's very clearly bitter that Ned assumed that he had killed the king out of, I'm not sure what exactly Ned figured, that he was trying to take the king's place because Ned found him sitting on the Iron Throne. He certainly didn't put up much of a fight when Ned said, "Get out of that chair."
Yeah. I mean, you know, Ned and his honor, he would have been annoyed at Jaime for killing the king, even though he was there to kill the king.
Right. But it was not Jaime's job to do so. Right. It was Jaime's job to fight him while he tries to do so.
But also, I wonder if he felt like it was an attempt by the Lannisters to muscle in on the end game, you know, that Jaime was actually working for the Lannister family there.
Sure. Yeah, because Tywin and his people were sacking King's Landing. Yeah, that makes sense.
And who was going to ascend the Iron Throne was up in the air at that point, right? I mean, it could easily have been Tywin.
Yeah, in fact, Pycelle talked Aerys into letting Tywin in because Pycelle assumed that Tywin would climb to the throne once he got into the city.
Jaime asks the pretty reasonable thing that why is he the one who's labeled with this when Robert broke his oaths in rebelling against the crown anyway? Robert ascended the throne, was not known as Robert Baratheon, first of his name, Oathbreaker.
Except for in the circles of Viserys Targaryen.
Very true, yes.
Yeah, it boils down to perception equaling reality. You know, as Brienne tells it here, Robert's rebellion was thought of as being done for honor and the love of a woman, and you know, right or wrong about that is the perception, and so that is the reality. And you know, as Brienne said specifically, he rode to save the realm. When the actual reality is, if not for Jaime, King's Landing explodes, hundreds of thousands are killed, and Robert fails miserably at saving the realm.
I wonder also if some of it is the sort of the going into the haunted house feeling of wanting to call Jaime the Kingslayer because he's the most feared swordman in the realm. It's like you want to say something negative about him behind his back from 500 miles away because you can, because it shows how tough you are, you know. I wonder if that's part of it. And of course you can't say like that kind of thing about the king because that's treasonous, you know, but you can say it about one of the Kingsguard because he's not going to come for you.
Well, yeah, that's true. You know, to the spoils, to the victor go the spoils, and Robert is now the king. If Robert had lost the war, he might have been thought of as Robert Oathbreaker.
Very much so, yeah. And if Jaime was sitting the Iron Throne, they wouldn't be calling him the Kingslayer. They'd be calling him the King.
The King, right. Yeah. History is written by the victor, right? I think that was the That's the saying I was looking for earlier. Yeah, Robert won, so he is the king. He is not the Oathbreaker. And remember last week, I mentioned that we would get some information this week that might change. If Stannis knew the events, it might change his perception of it. And these are obviously the details I was referring to.
You mean Stannis' attitude towards Jaime?
His attitudes towards Jaime, yes. Jaime says that Brienne is as thick as a castle wall, and that is a term that is often used about Sir Duncan the Tall by Sir Arlen, the hedge knight that Duncan squired for. And the thing that Sir Arlen often said was, "Dunk the lunk thick as a castle wall." And I'm only bringing this up because there will be other subtle associations between Sir Duncan and Brienne later on. So I thought it noteworthy to point out this reference here. It's very small, and it's probably a common refrain in Westeros to call someone thick as a castle wall. But because there will be other associations between the two, I just thought I'd point it out.
Okay. You'll refer back to this when you point out the next one, right?
If I remember.
You're our only hope, Obi-Wan. Is it Jaime that says after the dancing griffins lost the Battle of the Bells? Is it Jaime who says those words? That's interesting because we learned about the Battle of the Bells back in Arya 5, right? That's it was John Connington sacked the Stony Set looking for the injured Robert Baratheon.
Right, at the beginning of the war.
Right. Ned Stark and Hoster Tully arrived, defeated Connington, and John Connington was exiled afterwards. His sigil is a dancing griffin, so that's who lost the Battle of the Stony Set. John Connington was Hand of the King, right? And his exile led to the sort of the cascade of Hands of the King that ended up with Rosart became the last Hand of the King.
After Carlton Chelstead was burned alive for disagreeing with the wildfire plot. Jaime also mentions that Rhaegar returned from the south to convince his father, the king, to reach out to Tywin Lannister, bury the hatchet, put past feelings aside, and ask Tywin for help, which he did. And then there was no response from Casterly Rock. But Rhaegar returning from the south, I believe almost certainly him returning from the Tower of Joy, where he held Lyanna. And Ned and his friends found her and fought the members of the Kingsguard there.
Right. So where was this in the timeline of the rebellion? This is obviously Rhaegar is alive because he's there, so it's before the Battle of the Trident, fairly early. So
yeah,
just after the kidnapping of Lyanna.
Yeah, well, somewhere between the two, between the kidnapping and his death, I think. Yeah, I mean, we don't know how long he was at the Tower of Joy with Lyanna.
Question about that then. Did Aerys reach out to Tywin?
He did. According to Jaime, he did, because what Jaime said was no birds came back from Casterly Rock, which caused Aerys to become even more mistrustful and see traitors everywhere.
Which is slightly strange, actually, if you think about it, because Tywin brought his army to King's Landing.
Right.
They would not open the doors to them because they did not trust whose side they were on.
Right.
One bird saying, "Yep, we're on our way."
He would have waltzed straight into the city.
Right, exactly. Which I mean, and also it keeps your options open. It doesn't mean, I mean, you can certainly betray Aerys still.
That is, yeah, right.
That would take a good month to march an army across there. So you've got a month to keep an eye on the news of the war, see which way the wind is blowing, and then make your decision there. All you have to do is send that bird. If you just march, you seem like an invading army.
That is all true. Yeah, one bird. Yeah, it might have possibly been a lie, but so is that's not a bigger lie than coming into the city pretending to be on his side and then killing mass amount of people.
It's the same lie. I mean,
right. Yeah. Yes, I'm guessing at the gate they were probably saying, "Yeah, we're coming in on friendly terms." Yeah, and Tywin was determined to be on the winning side. That's why he did not respond. And I thought of him taking a page from the late Walter Frey,
right,
who was doing the same thing. It was it was the battle on the Trident that swayed Tywin to the side of Robert Baratheon and Ned Stark and Jon Arryn and company.
To a certain extent, we don't like Walder Frey because of this habit, but you can't really blame them. I mean, the last thing you want to do as a house that stood for thousands of years is pick the wrong side in a war, which could end to the eradication of your line.
Yeah, I see that. Yeah, I guess from the honor side, you're supposed to align yourself with your liege, which in Tywin's case would be his king.
Right, but we all know what Aerys was like, and Tywin in particular knew what Aerys was like.
That is true. What we're learning now is that not everybody knew necessarily what Aerys was like, because possibly word was not getting out about just how terrible he was. But one person that would know is Tywin Lannister.
Right. And the thing is, you don't necessarily know if he's crazy or if he's just nasty, but everyone knew he was nasty because his, what he did to the Starks. I mean, that's just it's cruel. It's they came as requested and he put them to death, but they hadn't actually done that much at that point. They'd had their sister kidnapped.
Yes, yeah. How widely that news was spread is uncertain
at that time, but
those who
yeah,
knew.
right. That's absolutely. But the fact that it was because he was insane that's the bit that probably it wasn't well known. But you're right, Tywin would know. And so, but again, it's still the same thing. You are honor bound to protect him, but you're logic bound to pick the winning side.
Yeah, it's a conundrum for him, certainly, especially since he has such a mixed relationship, such a complicated relationship with King Aerys.
Right. But to be fair to everyone, it's the same calculation for everyone. For Jon Arryn, for Robert. I mean, Robert obviously is the leader of this, so
yeah, is he though? I mean, the Starks are the ones whose daughter was kidnapped. Jon Arryn is the one who raised the banners when King Aerys wanted Robert and Ned's head brought to him by Jon Arryn. So I feel like everybody shared an equal part in the beginning of the uprising, but Robert, I guess, was the figurehead of it.
Yeah. And maybe his killing Rhaegar is the thing that cemented him as the ultimate leader. But I will say, actually, the one group that you didn't mention there who sided quickly against their king was the Tullys. They didn't really have a dog in the hunt in the same way that the Aryns, the Baratheons, and the Starks did.
Right, yeah, they married into it.
Right, after the fact, yeah. Yes, as a result of this, yeah. So, but they had the same calculation to make that the Lannisters did.
We'll be right back.
This episode is sponsored by Audible. To get a free audiobook, or 2 if you're an Amazon Prime member, go to our exclusive URL, audibletrial.com/ghostsharrenhal. You can find the link in our show notes. Yeah. And a lot of their bannermen, was specifically the Darys I'm thinking of, did not align with the Tullys and stayed with the king. So it's very complicated. Certainly a lot of people had to do some quick calculations and determine what side they wanted to back here. Yeah. One thing I wanted to point out was that only a select few master pyromancers knew about the city explosion plot, which explains why in the Tyrion chapters in Clash of Kings, they kept finding caches of wildfire around King's Landing, because those who knew where the caches were
all dead.
Are all dead. So the younger pyromancers probably didn't know there was caches of wildfire under the dragon pit and all these other locations.
I've had a thought about how those pyromancers might plan to get away with this. What you do is you set the cache up in a certain point, and then you label it as like a firing range, and then you get some junior to throw one pot of wildfire, thinking he's just testing out its effect, but it lands in the big cache, and meanwhile you're just safely outside the city in Dawn.
You just have to hope he has better aim than Edmure Tully
True.
with his
I,
bow
I
and
think
arrow.
this is an easier target.
Yes, I guess so.
So the king, I mean, part of the king's delusions was that he was seeing traitors everywhere. And Jaime mentions that Varys was always on hand to point out the ones that he'd missed. So there's two ways to look at that. Varys is doing his job.
Right, Master of Whisperer. Master of Whispers, not Master Whisperer.
But then the other part of it is he actually feeding the paranoia and actually making Aerys more mad, more crazy, less in control?
Yeah. We hear in this chapter that the king listened to Grand Maester Pycelle and let Tywin Lannister in, which we know why Pycelle said that, because he wanted Tywin to assume the throne. And Jaime says the one time that the king should have listened to Varys, he didn't. So Varys must have been saying, "You don't want to do this. Bad idea." Which, is kind of a sign that he was trying to do the right thing there and help the king.
But we've talked about Varys' motivations many times, but maybe Varys... I can't imagine that Varys wanted Aerys to stay on the throne, because at least if we take at face value the thing that Varys has maintained, that he serves the realm, he would want Aerys off the throne because Aerys was a monster. And he would have been one of the people who was well aware of this fact.
True.
But if Varys knew what Tywin planned for the city, that might lead him to say, keep that door locked.
Yeah, right. Yeah, that could be. Yeah, we also see that Jaime was the only Kingsguard in King's Landing, because Aerys kept him close because he didn't trust him. And we had discussed before why they would send 3 Kingsguard to guard Lyanna at the Tower of Joy, with Gerald Hightower, Arthur Dayne, and Oswell Went. Now we see it was 3 times as many as guarding the king himself. So, now, of course, it's also mentioned in this chapter that Gerald Hightower was in King's Landing. Aerys sent him to fetch Rhaegar, and then he stayed behind when Rhaegar came north from the Tower of Joy.
So that means there were 2 permanent Kingsguard on the Tower of Joy, and a third was added by Rhaegar. That's what
right. So 2 were guarding Rhaegar at the Tower of Joy, 2 were guarding the king in King's Landing.
And when Gerald Hightower came, Rhaegar said, all 3 of you stay here.
Right. Yes. So it's Rhaegar's fault, really.
It's Rhaegar who's... Which kind of goes to Rhaegar's motivation. He was very keen that Lyanna not be taken back, and so he risked his own safety for hers.
I mean, we've never gotten Rhaegar's side of the story, which would be very useful to have. But, the side of the story that we have, of course, is from the winning side, is that he kidnapped her, tortured, raped her, and everything. So you'd think putting 3 members of the Kingsguard on her would also be protecting himself from anybody finding out what is happening with Lyanna.
I mean, yes, there's nothing in putting 3 Kingsguard to protect her that goes to your motivations. It could be that he wants to be able to go back and rape her some more, and the last thing he wants is for her to be lost to him. It could be he's fallen madly in love with her and he's willing to risk his life for her,
Right.
It isn't no way to read Rhaegar's mind from what he did, but it is a sign that Aerys at least wasn't that loose and free with his Kingsguard. It's Rhaegar who was a little bit cavalier.
True.
One thing that's mentioned that we've already known, I think, is that this is the point where Queen Rhaella and Prince Viserys, the pregnant Queen Rhaella and Prince Viserys, were sent to Dragonstone. But Elia Martell, Rhaegar's wife, and her 2 children, Aegon and Rhaenys, were kept in the Red Keep, partly to keep Dawn on the side of the Targaryens, or at least neutral. I think it was felt if they were out of King's Landing, Dawn might come in on the side of everybody else.
Yeah, so according to Jaime, Aerys got it in his head that Lewin Martell betrayed Rhaegar on the Trident, and that's why he wanted to make sure Dorne stayed in check. Lewin Martell is Elia's uncle. He was also a member of Aerys' Royal Kingsguard. So, it had always seemed odd that Rhaella and Viserys were sent away to safety, but not Elia and the new heir after Rhaegar died, because they were sent to Dragonstone after Rhaegar died. And,
Oh, yes. Yes, good point. Aegon was the heir to the throne at that point. Baby Aegon was...
Right. Does it still hold when his father died? His father was the heir, or does it drop to Viserys?
No, I think generally it's... isn't this primogenitor? That's more to do with gender. It is... It goes to Aegon. That's the typical way it does. It goes...
Okay. Even though his father died
It stays
before...
on the firstborn line rather than dropping to the elder uncle.
Yeah, so that's my point exactly. It seems odd that they would keep the new heir there at King's Landing in a dangerous situation and send the others away. And we find out why. It's because he was trying to keep Dorne in check, but he probably could have done that with just Elia and Rhaenys.
Right, or done it by sending them to Dragonstone too. You send them with enough people that if the Martells switch sides, you kill those people. You don't have to be in King's Landing for that to happen. But I guess it's more immediate if they're there on site. You can do the thing that happened to Beth Cassell. You can hold them on the castle walls and threaten them.
Yeah, I guess so. Yeah, the visual is more powerful, I guess.
Jaime says that Aerys didn't think he would die from wildfire, rather like Aerion Brightflame, that he would turn into a dragon. Aerion Brightflame, of course, is thought to be a monster by just about everyone, apart from Aerys, apparently. So,
It's hero, baby.
Including Aerion's own brother, Egg, thought he was a monster, right? Yeah.
Yeah, right.
Yes. He's the famous Targaryen who died by drinking a glass of wildfire, which presumably was a very unfortunate way to go.
Yes, he thought it would turn him into a dragon. It just made him dead. And another thing that Aerion Brightflame is famous for is having a son named Maegor, the only other Maegor to my knowledge in the Targaryen line.
I don't know why it died out. It's a lovely name.
Yes, and honestly, if you think about it, Aerion might be just as misunderstood. Maybe he did not know that there was wildfire in that cup.
But Aerion's experience has to make... Well, if Aerys wasn't mad, it would make Aerys wonder about the wisdom of lighting the whole city on fire with wildfire in the belief that you will walk out of it.
Yeah, and you could also extrapolate that to include his brother Aegon, Egg, who also died at Summerhall in a wildfire.
All of this makes you wonder about what's happened to Daenerys, because she seems to be the one who actually is fulfilling this Targaryen dream.
Yes, I had that same thought. Yes, maybe. Well, I hate to say maybe it's about worthiness, because we all love Egg. So I would like to think of him as being quite worthy, but there's something special clearly about Daenerys that she's. Although we're talking wildfire versus regular fire, maybe
is that true of Egg? I thought he died in a regular fire.
That's a good question.
I think it's a regular fire. I believe.
Yeah, they were trying to hatch eggs, and so in my mind it was wildfire, but it might have been regular fire. I'd have to look that up. I can't remember off the top of my head.
The other part of it is perhaps dragons. Like, when you are a dragon owner, you are impervious, and these guys. But was Aerion Brightflame in the time of dragons?
No. Nope, he was an older brother to Egg.
Oh yeah, so that's right. Yeah, much too late for that. So maybe that's it. Maybe if you are a dragon owner, you become immune.
Oh, maybe. Yeah, could be the detail that we're missing. There is a rare vulnerable moment from Jaime after he tells the story where he's about to pass out and Brienne calls him the Kingslayer. She calls for help, and she says, the Kingslayer. And Jaime thinks to himself, my name is Jaime. And I just thought, look at that. He wants her to call him Jaime. It matters to him. And I noticed that up until he told her this story, he always called her wench.
Right.
But afterward, he calls her Brienne every time he says her name. Give me your arm, Brienne. Sit down, Brienne. And I wondered if maybe there's, a newfound closeness between the two of them after telling that story, after telling a story he's never told to anybody else, it seems.
I'm going to say, if Kingslayer irks you and wench irks Brienne, why don't they make a pact right at the start of this journey? I'll call you Brienne,
Right.
you call me Jaime. Deal? You call me Kingslayer, I'm calling you wench again. Yeah. You don't need to become close. You could just make a pact, really.
Just make a pact, yes. Although Brienne said she doesn't make pacts with known trust breakers.
If he breaks the pact, you break your side of the pact. It's not like,
Right.
So Roose mentions that wherever Jaime goes, he sows dissension, including here at Harrenhal. That each Frey had a different opinion of what to do with him. And Roose himself is torn about what to do with him. I mean, the thing about... This is kind of like the biggest part of the chapter for me, is what Roose is doing, because there's a point at which he and Jaime are talking, and Jaime is concerned that Brienne is noticing that what's going on is a negotiation here. But I don't think there's that much covert discussion going on. If Roose
agree.
Bolton sends Jaime to King's Landing, then he's betraying his king. His king wants
Right.
Jaime Lannister back. He can couch it in terms of honoring Kat's wishes, but she's not in charge.
And if you look at it, he's doing what neither his king nor the king's mother wants him to do. He's sending Jaime on to King's Landing, which is not what Robb wants him to do. But he's also not sending Brienne along with him to do the prisoner transfer as Kat wanted him to do. So in this move, by sending Jaime without Brienne, he is doing nothing that either of them want him to do.
Right. Which again goes to the sort of like the burgeoning sense of Roose Bolton as being a sort of like an agent of himself first and foremost, and not very loyal to anybody. It's a good point, but he does make the point to Brienne that even if she went, there's no prisoner exchange to be had now because Arya is lost. They don't have Arya, so they can't exchange for Arya, and Sansa's now married to Tyrion, so there's no one to be sent back. So it would be a waste of her journey.
Yeah. I guess there's no way of getting out of the marriage thing and saying, we'll give you Jaime if you give us back Brienne and annul that marriage.
The Starks win the Iron Throne and kill all the Lannisters. Yes, they can get out of that marriage.
That's true.
They don't even have to make her a widow. They can annul that marriage from a position of power, But believe me, they will. And they
right. The very first thing they'll do is take care of that after the heads have rolled. So, but one thing I found odd in this chapter is that Roose talks about Rickard Karstark's offer of his daughter Alice's hand in marriage in a rather odd way. He speaks about it in present terms.
Right.
But last Jaime chapter, he is the one that informed Vargo Hoat and Jaime and Brienne and everyone else standing there that Rickard Karstark was dead. So Roose says about Rickard Karstark's offer, he promises the hand of his daughter to the man who brings him your head, comparing the 10,000 gold dragons that Jaime says Cersei would pay to this offer. And Hoat's plan was to ransom Jaime for 100,000 gold dragons, and then once he got that money, still then turn and deliver Jaime to Rickard Karstark for Alice's hand in marriage. And when he explained that plan to Roose, Roose said, yeah, that's a good plan, but that's not going to work because Rickard won't be giving anybody his daughter's hand in marriage because King Robb shortened him by a head.
Right.
So kind of multiple times in this chapter, he alludes to this in the present tense, this offer from Rickard Karstark. And I thought, why is he wording it that way? He knows he's dead. So I just found it a little bit odd. I'm not quite sure what was happening there. And not only does he know, he knows that Jaime and Brienne know because he's the one that told Jaime and Brienne.
What I'll say is there is, of course, the lingering idea that the offer still holds, that the Karstarks would honour the deal even though Rickard is dead. But the second thing is, I think Roose is trying to he's trying to lay out all the options to explain why he feels torn about the decision that he's about to make. You know, that there's a lot of things available to him that he could do, and he's just listing that as another one to sort of explain why his loyalties are torn. And it could still be true. I think if Vargo Hoat were to arrive, well, I mean, no, that's not true. The Karstarks would not honour the deal, but they would pay him off. They would say, here, 10,000 gold dragons, get out.
Yeah, especially without Rickard to sign off on the deal. Anyway, I just thought it odd that he was referring to the deal in the present tense because Rickard is dead. And so one thing that is revealed is the reasoning behind Roose Bolton's choice of his bride. He mentions to Jaime that he wed a Frey recently and is a Walder Frey, and Jaime assumes it was fair Walder Frey, and Roose corrects him and says, no, it's fat Walder Frey, because Lord Walder promised me the bride's weight in silver, and so I chose accordingly. And it just shows the pragmatist nature of Roose Bolton. He's not one to be swayed by emotion. He's going to do the pragmatic option in a lot of cases, which goes to you saying he's an agent of himself, it appears.
Yeah, absolutely. So Roose says that Arya is lost, but has been found. But I did not understand this. I was hoping you'd bail me out here because I literally don't understand what he meant by this.
Well, it's a bit of a mystery, right? I mean,
okay, good.
Either he has people in the Brotherhood Without Banners who are reporting news to him, or maybe word has already like we keep talking about, these aren't always necessarily chronological POV chapters. So possibly word has already reached Riverrun about Arya being found and ransoming her to Riverrun. Although if that's the case, his wording of I mean to see her returned safely to the north doesn't make a great deal of sense unless he's talking about the north figuratively, meaning the Starks.
Right. Yeah, okay, good, because I was confused by that. I was like, I missed the point where Roose knew about Arya. But you're right, the logical inference is that he's got a spy within the Brotherhood Without Banners, and that person has reported that Arya Stark is found.
That makes the most sense, yes. And another thing that comes up about Arya here is that the marriage between Arya and Elmar Frey was severed because of the betrayal by the Starks. But I was thinking, during the reconciliation talks between the two families, you'd think a rekindling of this marriage proposal might have been put back on the table as a good way of kind of binding the two houses together.
The problem is the Starks don't have her, so they can't offer her. I mean, you could pencil it in. You could say, if we ever find her,
right? You could pencil it in, exactly. She was penciled in before, and they didn't have her the last time the proposal was made. So,
Roose mentions that there's 1,000 leagues of mountain, bog, and sea between his walls and the Lannisters, so enmity of the Lannisters doesn't mean much, and that's very true, and it's a point we've made about the Starks themselves. The Starks retreat back to the north. They have nothing really to fear from the Lannisters. The Lannisters, the north is just too impregnable, apart from 50 angry Vikings landing on your shore who can take the whole thing. Apart from that, it's utterly impregnable.
Yeah, except for that one situation, right? Yeah, it's really the Riverlands that keep being an issue for Robb because he can't protect them
Yeah.
from the
Which
north.
again, going back to what we were talking about before about Robert's rebellion, it was brave of the Tullys to join in, on that one side because they are the punch bag in the middle of all this.
They really are. They're the
Yeah.
issue in a lot of
Whereas,
situations.
and coincidentally, the other family that could be in that same situation are the Tyrells. They're the other middle of the continent family, easily accessible from every other point. They kept their noses very clean in Robert's rebellion.
Right. Yeah. Right. Yeah, they stuck by the
Hmm.
king and just sieged
Right.
Storm's End.
Yes. And then apologized afterwards.
Right. Oh, sorry about that. We were just doing what we were told.
So yeah, uh, confusing why Jaime felt like he was in a secret negotiation with Roose and was hoping that Brienne wasn't picking up on it, because to me it seemed all out in the
Right.
open. He's asking Roose to send him
And
home. You'll get lots of money.
yeah, and not much was really
No.
said between the two. It was like, um, you know, I could give you to Edmure as a wedding present. That's a bad idea. Lannisters have long memories. The Dreadfort's too far away from Casterly Rock for me to care about that. Lannister friendship is a better option. Not sure you're the kind of friends I want. End of conversation. I mean, where was the negotiation there exactly?
I guess the one aspect to it is there is an overture of we would become allies, not just we're going to pay you for
Yes.
Jaime, but we're actually going to be allied in some way. But it'd be
Yes.
strange to have an ally who is the liege, who owes loyalty to your enemy. I mean, I guess the hope is
Right.
that the Boltons betray the Starks in some way down the line.
I think that's what ultimately it was. It was just I'm not sure I would have necessarily called it a negotiation there, because it was just like, hey, we will back you if you come to our side, which seems pretty obvious. They would back the Boltons if they came to their side. So anyway, I just thought it a little bit odd that he was thinking they were having some sort of secret negotiation there.
The other part at the end of the chapter is strange to me is the treatment of Brienne, because
Yes.
he said you're a traitor because you did this thing, which now Roose is doing himself. Roose is doing the same thing, but is arresting her for treason. Yeah.
That is true. Yes. Yeah, the plan to leave her with Vargo Hoat, so that's kind of how the chapter wraps up. It seems unwise. If Brienne's telling the truth and is sent by Catelyn Stark, he might just want to fact check that before accusing her of treason and handing her over to the ruthless sellswords.
She's guilty of treason in following Catelyn Stark's orders against Robb Stark's orders. That's not untrue.
Well, yes, except for that Catelyn, she was doing what she was told by the woman she served. So if anyone is the traitor, it is Cat,
Right, yeah.
not this person carrying out the mission.
But I mean, the genuine motivation seems to be he's about to take Vargo Hoat's prized possession from him, and he needs to give him something back in return, something that he can ransom for some money.
Yeah, he's also giving him Harrenhal. That could be worth some ransom Harrenhal,
That's a good point.
Why would Roose leave a woman that is sworn to the same side as him to be possibly exploited in every way possible from a band of brigands?
Roose does make the interesting point that he thinks that Robb's chances of winning this war are becoming perishingly slim. He says, and he thinks that he should should bend the knee and try to accept a pardon, which I think we've talked before about. That is a possible solution. It's one that Kat's thinking about.
Right. Though I will say it's not great for one of Robb's top bannermen to be thinking this way and vocalizing it to the enemy, but I mean, he's just being honest, I guess.
Yeah, but again, that might go to the sort of like the unspoken, well, the spoken but unrevealed negotiation that's going on. If when you get back, you could probably report the fact that I said that the North should bend the knee.
Right. Keep that in mind.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. I just wonder if Joff/Tywin would pardon Robb. I mean, I think Tywin would. You got to be a little worried about Joff. If I were Robb, I'd be very nervous about bending the knee and putting my head down in front of Joff after what happened to Robb's father.
Yeah.
But, Roose is heading to Edmure's wedding at the Twins. And so maybe he can team up with Cat and convince Robb to bend the knee. Maybe this wedding will mend all the fences, repair the Frey and Stark relationship, and start a kind of a repair between the Lannister Stark relationship, if that's possible.
Yeah, that is plausible.
Maybe it'll be a good thing.
So Roose explains that Vargo Hoat chopped off the hand because he didn't want Jaime to be sent back. He didn't want, he felt that if he handed him over to Roose like that, there's no way Roose could send him to King's Landing because Roose would be, in the firing line for doing it. But Roose points out that Vargo Hoat is in even more trouble than Robb Stark because there's almost no winning scenario now for the brave companions. And Robb Stark, Joffrey accepted, could get mercy, but Vargo Hoat never will.
No, he's too low level, and
so, but there's the sort of desperation that comes from that because he's taken a desperate action because of that in chopping Jaime's hand off, which is an all or nothing action because
it sure is. There's no going back from that. It's not like he just shaved his head or something, which I think his head's shaved right now anyway, but yes, it's definitely an all or nothing action there. And, it just doesn't make sense necessarily why Hoat is afraid that Roose will send Jaime back to Riverrun. I mean, his only hope is a Stark victory. So of the two options, the worst thing is for Hoat is for Jaime to be sent back to King's Landing, not necessarily to Riverrun.
Because at Riverrun, he's still a trump card in the negotiations to end the war.
Right.
But of course, the Starks having Jaime, the Starks losing Jaime, the war might have to be fought to the death. The Starks having Jaime, that gives them a bargaining chip to bend the knee.
Yes. And then Hoat might be in trouble again.
Exactly.
He's really in a pickle. He should just leave and go back to Essos, really.
That's what I think too. If I were him, I'd be like, Even the threat of being given Harrenhal has brought the curse down on him.
Right. Yeah, there's actually a good line here where Roose Bolton says, "The brave companions didn't fight on the Blackwater, but they died there."
That is a good line.
I like that.
Yeah. Okay, some background. What do you have for us?
Well, so Jaime said that King Aerys realized that Robert Baratheon was the greatest threat that House Targaryen had faced since Daemon Blackfyre. Well, that sounds like a story worth telling, right? So who was this great threat to the Targaryens? Well, Daemon Blackfyre, born Daemon Waters, was the bastard son of King Aegon IV, a.k.a. Aegon the Unworthy. His mother was Princess Daena Targaryen, cousin to King Aegon IV. Daena was confined to the Maiden Vault in the Red Keep with her sisters when she got pregnant. So Daemon's birth was a bit of a mystery, and to add to the mystery, she refused to name who the boy's father was for 12 years. Eventually, she revealed that the father was her cousin, Aegon, who by then was King Aegon IV. And just as an aside, Daemon was named after his great-grandfather, the Daemon from House of the Dragon.
Right.
So, King Aegon personally knighted his bastard son and gave him Blackfyre, the legendary Valyrian steel sword used by Aegon the Conqueror himself, rather than give it to his legitimate oldest son, Daeron. That's when Daemon began calling himself Daemon Blackfyre. All would have been fine, except that on his deathbed, Aegon IV legitimized all of his bastards, and there were many. 13 known and a few more to be rumored. So he was busy with the bastard children.
So at that point, did Daemon's name change again to Targaryen at that point?
It's a good question, being that he was legitimized.
Yeah, carry on.
Anyway, King Aegon IV had also spread rumors that his oldest legitimate son, Daeron, wasn't actually his. And that rumor, coupled with the king giving Daemon the sword Blackfire, along with some mistrust of now King Daeron II stemming from his association with Dorne, caused some lords to favor Daemon as king over his half-brother Daeron. I'm going to skip a lot of details here, but ultimately, 12 years into the reign of his half-brother Daeron II, Daemon Blackfire began his rebellion in earnest. As a bastard of House Targaryen, Daemon took the Targaryen dragon sigil and reversed the colors, a black three-headed dragon on a red field, as so he became known as the Black Dragon. Now, we won't get into the details of the struggle for the Iron Throne right now due to time, as this has been a very long episode already. However, Daemon making his claim to the throne began a 64-year run of his descendants rebelling against the crown in an attempt to claim it.
So comparison with the television show, this is all quite closely kept, actually. The bath time happens. That's the point where Jaime tells the full story, and it's well done, actually. You sort of see the sort of like the dawning horror on Brienne's face as she hears it, and she's, why didn't you tell all this kind of thing?
Right. I vaguely remember this.
Yeah, it's probably because you saw Brienne's bottom. And then the dinner with Roose as well is pretty closely kept, and the decision is the same. Jaime to go to King's Landing, Brienne to be kept for treason, because there's no brave companions in the TV show.
Right.
And that's why it's a little bit hairier for Roose, because it's one of his men, Locke, who chops the hand off. So he is more directly responsible than Vargo Hoat doing it.
Right.
Yeah, it's still indirect, but it was his men under his command who did it.
Sure.
So,
yes.
But yes,
see the distinction.
Yeah. Otherwise, very, very similar. Pedantry. I didn't really see anything apart from I was curious about what Roose knew about Arya, but you've given me a plausible reason for that.
Yeah. And why does he refer to Rickard Karstark in the present tense with his deal? But, that's not really pedantry, I guess. Just something I didn't quite understand.
Yeah, that's fine. That counts as pedantry. We don't understand it. I mean, we're really studying this, Do you have some news and notes?
We got a little bit here. We have another royal wedding from the cast of Game of Thrones.
Oh.
A while back, we told you about Jack Gleeson, who played Joffrey Baratheon, getting married. Well, according to reports, his on-screen betrothed has recently tied the knot. I'm saying betrothed because at this point, we don't know whether the royal wedding will happen or not in our story. So,
Marjorie Tyrell.
Yes.
Gotcha.
Yes. So Natalie Dormer, who played Marjorie Tyrell on Game of Thrones, married David Oakes in a small ceremony in Somerset in February. I'm guessing that's a place in England somewhere.
Southwest of England, yeah.
Okay.
All right. Kind of where you go on vacation in England.
Oh, good place to get married, I guess.
Yeah, it's coastal. I mean, it's as warm as it gets. Yeah.
Hence the name Somerset, I guess.
Perhaps.
Although the summer is spelled differently.
Yeah.
Well, if Oakes' name sounds familiar, it might be because he plays Earl Godwin on Netflix Vikings Valhalla. The name did not sound familiar to me because I'd never seen that show, but...
Not in the slightest.
Right. So the couple began dating back in 2019, and in 2017, they spent time together as part of the cast of Venus in Fur, which they performed at Theatre Royal or Theatre Royal. I don't know how.
It's a Royal.
Theatre Royal. Okay.
Interesting. Well, I'm glad that the Game of Thrones cast are, despite their monstrous behavior, are able to find happiness in real life.
In real life, yes.
So, again, thanks to our Lord Paramount Sustainers who joined us for the Sustainer call. We had a great time.
And Royal Kingsguard.
Oh, the Royal Kingsguard were there too. Yes. Yeah, we had a lovely time. It's always great to talk to you guys, and we'll do it again
So
soon.
much fun. Yes, it's so much fun. It's always just such a good time.
All right, let's conclude. Good news for Jaime. He's going where he wants to go, headed home. Not so good for Brienne. She's being kept in the dubiously, well, not definitely dangerous clutches of Roose Bolton.
Yes, is not an ideal situation. And like I said earlier, seems like he's not doing what either Stark would want him to do. You know, Robb would want Jaime back, and Cat wants Brienne to bring the daughters back, and he's not even giving her that opportunity to go and see if that's possible. It feels like Roose never quite does what his king would want. He sends all 3,000 men to Duskendale for no apparent reason, and here he is doing this, and he put a lot of he's put a lot of people to death that maybe the king, by the king's name, put a lot of people to death that is not necessarily known whether the king would have wanted that or not. As you put it, he does seem to just do his thing, whatever he thinks is best.
So it's too bad that they're going to be sundered because they were beginning to form a bond. And now we know the true story about the Kingslaying. We feel a little bit more sympathy for Jaime Lannister, but let's remind readers that he did push Brandon Stark out of a window.
Yes, it doesn't undo all the awful things that he has done, including what he did to Brandon Stark. But yeah, maybe she would have greater respect for Jaime now that she knows the reasons that he killed the king. So, I don't know, but it is a shame they're going to be headed separate ways, I guess.
Vargo Hoat knows that only a Stark victory can save him. Given that, would he kill and torture Brienne? Because that might cost him his head even in the event of a Stark victory.
Right.
So maybe she's got maybe she might be safe here. Just possibly.
Yes, you would think he'd be better off returning her safely to Riverrun and explaining he lost Jaime to Roose. I had Jaime. I was going to bring him to you. That's what I was going to do.
Right. But I'm pretty sure Roose won't want that story reaching Riverrun.
Well, true. Yes, he certainly would not want that story reaching Riverrun.
But actually, that's a consideration I hadn't had until now. I mean, like, he's betraying the Starks here. And Vargo Hoat and Brienne of Tarth know he is.
True. Yeah, that's a good point.
And they need to be silenced.
And how is Hoat going to hold Harrenhal with just the brave companions? It's such a big castle, and in my mind, I don't picture there being enough to hold this. Now, walls go a long way to helping that. But
you've got to man walls. You can always climb a wall.
Yes, and it's a huge, huge castle, so...
I will say, I wonder if that's Roose's endgame. He wants the brave companions to take Brienne to Essos and ransom her there.
Right.
Keep this idea of sapphires alive, even though we know it's not really true.
Right. Yes. What happens when Hoat discovers that? That's something you gotta wonder.
Right. But in the meantime, all of the people who know about Roose's betrayal are out of the picture.
And Roose talks about Robb likely to lose the war and that he should bend his knee. So if he knows this, will he stay true to his king to the end, or could he jump ship? Or just try and wash his hands of it and return home to the Dreadfort if he can figure out how to get there.
Yeah, and it seems that he's going to go see Robb and Cat, and maybe he and Cat both have the same idea that if Robb could bend the knee at this point, we could have peace and everyone could go home to bring in the harvest, because winter is coming, by the way.
It is. That's right.
And so maybe there's a chance for Roose to end the war. I will say again, bringing Jaime Lannister with you would help.
Right.
Because that's the bargaining chip that brings this war to a peaceful end.
Sure. Yeah.
He's getting rid of that. Who have we got next week?
Next week, we're off to visit Jaime's little brother Tyrion in King's Landing.
I love Tyrion chapters. That's awesome.
Me too. And we get a new member of the small council, and it's not who the Lannisters thought they were going to get.
Seems strange. All right.
Yes, you want to turn in next week to find out who it is.
All right, there's 3 things you could do to help us. You could leave us a review. That helps spread the word. You could buy merchandise at ghostsofharrenhal.threadless.com, or you can buy us a cup of Arbor Gold at buymeacoffee.com/ghostsharrenhal. Consider becoming a sustainer at the Knight of the Realm or Lord Paramount level. It helps keep us going and gives you some cool perks.
That's right. And of course, you could always reach us at ghost.harrenhal@gmail.com. You can go out and follow us on Twitter. We're at GhostHarrenhal. We're on Facebook, Instagram, Discord, and YouTube.
Thanks for listening.
Thanks.
Bye.
Bye.